Human resources is one of your areas of responsibility at JP Morgan Chase, obviously a very integral part to the success of the corporation. How does the company's CSR effort play into your hiring of new colleagues and new people that you want to bring onto the JP Morgan team?
Well, I think look, we have to start in the communities we work in. I think it's very, very important that we are hiring in those communities. We spend a lot of time in high schools trying to bring high school students along in part-time programs and move them in. I think all of our efforts really are targeted at how do we better out the communities we operate in, and that can only happen by us giving experience, giving time, and by the way, creating opportunities. I had the HR executives together yesterday, and I talked to them about a different type of hiring and said, listen, we have all these programs, but at the end of the day, what we have to do is help people find the right place to operate. And sometimes people don't like change. But it might be most valuable for their life, and our job is to have the vision to be able to help them succeed. I could speak for myself that I was very fortunate growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and ended up doing what I'm doing, and grew up in communities that I go back and work in. And nothing makes me happier to see us be able to redouble our efforts in communities across America and be able to help people who weren't so attuned to the things that life could have for them. So I think hiring, and by the way, we'll hire in a year. I don't know if I'm proud or sad about this fact, because it does talk about turnover also. But we'll hire 50, 60,000 people in a year, and a lot of those are great opportunities. So I think it's really something we're proud of, the opportunity to put people to work.
Great, thank you, Frank. Jack, a couple thoughts?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. There's three big takeaways that I've learned from how the world and how our users have defined Twitter, and a lot of what you see in Twitter today, including everything on the screen to my right and left, was completely invented by the users. Very little of it came from the company. A lot of what the company started with was just a spark of an idea, and then it was defined every day by its users. But those three concepts were immediacy, transparency, and approachability. And the immediacy part was, people want to get in and immediately, without having to think, start using and start publishing content and start taking this content from wherever they are. And one of the things that we did early on was we made sure that Twitter scaled down to the lowest common denominator, which is a $20 cell phone in the middle of Kenya. So even if you're in the middle of Kenya with the cheapest cell phone that you can buy, you can still participate in a global conversation. And this has allowed worldwide people to, wherever they are, report and share what they're seeing and what they're experiencing in front of them, and really, allow everyone to enter into that conversation, go directly to that point. And we've seen this usage time and time again. And it goes into the second point. As people are updating more and free to immediately create and share content and consume it, there's a lot more content, and there's a lot more transparency. People are talking about their organizations, they're talking about what they're doing, they're talking about the corporations they work for, they're talking about the movements they're aligned with and they're joining. And this we've seen time and time again as well, where people with 5 characters and 20 followers will create an entire social movement in the middle of Moldova against election results. And we've seen this in every sort of situation, not just social movements, but within corporations, within organizations, and even with, helping in our own country and disaster relief. And the last thing is if you have that sort of transparency, everything becomes more approachable. So the most exciting thing for me about using these technologies and corporations using these technologies and organizations using these is that they become more human. You have an understanding of the humans that make up this organization or make up the corporation. And you see that they're at the same level that you're at. Everyone in the world at some point has some sort of meal and they share it. Those small details of life bind us together and really remind us that we're constantly human. So in the service case, in community service, I think the biggest thing that we can use these technologies for is just bringing awareness to what needs to be done and what we're doing, especially within corporations where it's a little bit hard to get that message out because everything is kind of flooded by the marketing message, and that needs to sustain the business. But there's a lot of important messages, a lot of important movements within the organization that really speak to the values and the spirit of what the organization is doing. And just one example, JP Morgan Chase had a great campaign on Facebook, which allowed causes and charities to compete for funds. And the model based on these pages just fit. I mean, it was just something that felt really good and people were used to. They didn't have to think about how to enter in and how to approach and how to participate immediately in helping out this cause or helping out their favorite charity or helping out their favorite service organization. They just went to the page and interacted, and meanwhile, Chase was in the back supporting all this and providing the infrastructure. Stuff like that just makes this entire conversation so much easier and really sparks interaction. And that's what I would encourage people to look at these technologies for, is how do we use these to really surface awareness of what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, how to get in, and then to spark interaction, whether it be a conversation, a dialogue, or actually getting, rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty. So we definitely have a long way to go, but I think we've made some good progress along those lines.
Thank you, Jack. When you consider that tweeting and Twitter weren't even around 5 years ago, and then you see the role that tweets have played in some pretty important social movements. The election, some would argue, of President Obama, very integral to some of his gains in terms of the votes he got. Certainly as the information was emanating about the terrorist attack in Mumbai, and probably on a large international scale, most recently in June of last year, the whole discussion of the attempt to overthrow the government in Iran. And you guys Twitter really own the pipe, and everybody else is there, and as you said, you want to facilitate social interaction. As the owners of the pipe, if you will, is there a role that you need to play in terms of encouraging more interaction as it relates to social improvements and how the corporate community can help? And you mentioned one example of JP Morgan Chase.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that the company can do is really develop the product as a utility that does not shut off. So I consider technologies like Twitter and Facebook and a lot of what we see springing up as equivalent to electricity and equivalent to water. These are things that without thinking you should be able to turn to and use to get your message across and really participate in. So I think the biggest challenge is, given this global mass using these technologies, how do we scale them so that everyone can participate in that conversation? But more importantly, we've come up with this very easy way to get a bunch of content in. How do we filter it out in a relevant way so that people in real time can get relevant information that they can act on? And I think that's our greatest challenge in the next 5 years as a technology community, is building smart filters which expose and surface relevant information that people can act on. so that we're not overwhelmed by messages and by technology, and not consumed, by how to use them, but we can really, we're really inspired to act on them. And I think that's one of, I think when technology is very successful, it's a good mirror for our humanness, and it really sparks that more face-to-face interaction. And I think every success of Twitter, of Facebook, of Google, of eBay and YouTube has when it's been sparking more of that face-to-face interaction and connecting people to get together physically.